Hey, what's going on, guys? I wanted to walk you through a quick drill for rotator cuff activation and kind of mobility too. But a lot of times when we're trying to activate our rotator cuff, typically it's started down here in neutral, and we're doing like internal or external rotation in neutral with a band or with a dumbbell. And that can be very helpful initially to just kind of get those muscles activated and turned on in a pain-free range of motion. Typically though, after that, we really need to start activating the rotator cuff in the shoulder ranges of motion where we're having symptoms occur. I'm really big on that because it's like we're typically, if we're saying that the rotator cuff is insufficient, it's really insufficient positionally as well, to where if somebody's raising their arm, if they're only getting pain during a certain arc of that motion, or if they're reaching into the back seat of their car, or they're reaching into the ATM machine, and that's when they're feeling their pain, or oftentimes we're putting on a jacket or something, we need to be training the rotator cuff around that range of motion and elevation that we're experiencing our pain symptoms. A lot of times that's pretty close to 90 degrees of elevation. So one thing you can start to do is, if we come up to a wall, and I'm here because I'm trying to film something, you'll see it in a minute, but if we come up to a wall and we let the arm rest at the wall, initially I think it's good, so that we're not arching our back, to just try to flatten or posterior pelvic tilt, flatten your low back to the wall, and then work on these, rotations up toward the wall behind you and then back down. And you can do that with maintaining a little bit of pressure back into the wall behind you, which can actually kick on a couple of other stability muscles to load modulate. You may find that without touching the wall, this is painful, and then you're able to push the arm back into the wall a little bit, and now this is not painful. And that's just because we load modulated, we were able to kick on a couple other muscle groups and change the overall pull on the shoulder. From there, I really like rotating inward to where I'm in this 90-90-90 position. And then from there, what we do is we work on, can I get my arm all the way back to the wall if I'm up against the wall? I think this is a really good exercise. So I like this for like external rotation isometrics. So I'll have people do like 10 times 10-second hold into the wall. And again, I'm maintaining a little bit of pressure into the wall that way. So that's a really good one. If you don't have the range of motion to get all the way back there, you can just simply like take a pillow or something like that and set your arm here. The pillow's resting on my shoulder. This could be a foam roller. And then now I'm just pushing into the pillow, or whatever thickness of surface that you need to kind of adequately accommodate how much range of motion you have. So that would be like a 10 times 10 seconds range of motion. Keeping with that kind of closed chain mindset to where our arm is actually in contact with something, one of the ones I really like to do for rotator cuff activation is the idea of a closed chain 90-90 external rotation. So normally when these are given, it would be like the patient's here, we've got a band, they're going to pull back to 90, they're at 90 degrees of elevation, and they're working on external rotation in that pattern. What I really like to do, and this is why I was over here, is if I get into the 90-90 like this, and then I actually push my elbow into the wall a little bit, and I get some axial loading on that glenohumeral joint, if I get compression on the joint, like a closed chain position, we get co-contraction of the rotator cuff muscles a little bit better. And again, we're getting a little bit of load modulation. If we're having some subacromial pinching or pain, this may shift the shoulder joint into a position where that is cleared out, and it just typically feels a little better. So you can do this a couple different ways. Hopefully you guys can see this. I'll try to stand back, but you can do the typical 90-90 rotation like this, and all I'm doing is maybe just leaning in a little bit into my arm, into the wall. But the one I really like to do, and this will be a little harder to see, but I'm going to close back. Let me see if I can stand over here. But the idea would be this arm is right out in front of me. Like if the wall was here, I'm pushing into that wall and rotating it like that. So this, if I'm loading this, I'm leaning into my arm a little bit. That is an awesome rotator cuff exercise, and it typically feels good for those people that do have that subacromial pinching, because we're getting a little bit of that axial load, and it just seems to kind of change the relationship of those tissue structures in that subacromial space. So try that out, see what you think. I really do. I like the idea of doing more of our shoulder exercises in closed chain. I've got like 8 to 10 exercises that I kind of consider like a closed chain stability program for the shoulder that I'll kind of be introducing to you guys along the way. But that's definitely one of them, that idea where you're doing the same, and you can do the same thing with internal rotation, right? Like if I'm here and I'm doing this with my left arm and I'm loading it and I'm leaning into the wall, I can load that on internal rotation, or I can come here and load that, do an internal rotation that way. So this typically works well at like a doorway where you can shut the band in the door to your house. You gotta be a little creative, but I had to be more creative to come up with a way to film myself doing this. So, but you can shut the band in a doorway and then run it along that same wall, and that works pretty well as far as a setup to kind of be able to perform this exercise. So this is a neat one, and like I said, I'll go over some other closed chain rotator cuff stability type exercises, but try incorporating that in with your programming for like rotator cuff activation as you're progressing out of neutral. And if they're not able to maybe tolerate full open chain 90-90 internal external rotation, this is a really good way to introduce those. I think it's maybe a little bit safer, and you don't have the person falling out of position so much, and there's just fewer moving parts because there's an additional contact point with your arm in the wall. So there's just some few different benefits, but I think it's worth adding into the programming, and patients typically seem to like it. So thanks for watching. Try this out. If you're finding these videos helpful, please hit the like button or share it with somebody that you think would also find value in this video. And please feel free to message us on any other exercise recommendations or tutorials that you want me to go over. Thanks.